104b. So we did the mission of all different kinds of flower offerings, measurements you're going to bring. So the first one was you're going to bring 1/10 of a measurement, the Yisarun. You bring one. You say two, you bring two. Says the Gemara Pshita, obviously, Asronos, Yavishtayim, it's Richale. You say one, you bring one, but you need a novelty for when you say two. Why? Hanami Pshita, so it's also obvious. When you say you bring two 1/10 measurements, you bring two 1/10 measurements. So says the Gemara, Hanami Pshita, Miut Asronos, Shtayim, it's Richale. You need that when you say Esronos, so what do you mean? Multiple. How much is multiple? So you're only obligated to bring two. You're not obligated to bring the max 60 or something like that. You're only obligated to bring two. That we need to teach you. So because we have to teach you that, we tell you the first case too. Now the guy said, Pirashti, Any Yodea Ma Pirashti. So you separated flour. We don't know how much flour you separated. Yavi Shishim Isaron. You have to bring now 60 measurements because that's the max. So Montana Amar Chizkiel Delo Kirebi. This idea that you bring 60 measurements in one vessel is not like Rebbe. The Rebbe Ha'amar Yomi Menachos Shel Asronos Me'echad Ve'ad Shishim. According to Rebbe, you have to bring it in 60 different vessels because you said mincha. Mincha sounds like one. Each one goes into a specific vessel. So according to him, that if you don't know how much you did, so each one's going to be brought in its own separate vessel. But this part of the mission that says you bring 60 in one vessel is not going to be like Rebbe. Rabbi Yochanan Amar, Afilu Tem Rebbe, it could even be Rebbe, but Omer Pirashti Esronos. Avalo kavatim bekli. The maisi shisim esronos b'shishim money. So it depends. If you set aside, if you know you set aside, but you didn't designate a vessel, so then you'll bring 60 in 60 vessels. However, if you designated a vessel, say here in this vessel, I'm going to bring flour, but you don't remember how much flour you said, then even Rebbe could agree that you'll bring 60 measurements of flour in that vessel. Okay. Now, Harei Mincha, if you just say it's upon me to bring a flour offering, so the first opinion said bring whatever you want, whichever one of the five. Rabbi Yehuda said, no, you have to bring a Mincha Soles, the finest flour. So the question is why? So first the Gemara thinks, well, since what's the reason why Rabbi Yehuda decides that out of the 5 different flour offerings, you're going to bring a mincha soles? You'll bring or out of the different mincha offerings, you'll bring the fine flour one. Why? So maybe because that's the one that the Torah opened up with. That's the first one that it's mentioned. The problem is we're going to see a number of other cases and other sacrifices that the Torah starts off with certain animals, but those are not the default. So that can't be our reason. For example, when you say if this was true, then when you say it's upon me to bring a fully consumed animal offering, you should bring ben bakar. You should bring cattle. You should bring the bull. Why? Next page. Because the Torah starts off with this. That's the animal that it starts off with. And if you say minatzon, you want to bring from flock, so then you have ikeves, bring a sheep. Why? Because that's what the Torah starts off with. Min ha'of, if you want to bring a bird, consumed offering, you have torim. You'll bring I was confused them. A pigeon, a turtle dove. Thank you. You bring a turtle dove. Since the Torah starts off with this bird, but yet Allah Matanan, how come the Mishnah says in 2 daf from now? Harei Ola, what do? You have ikeves. 1 second. Harei Ola, it should be ben bakar, it should be a bull, not a sheep. Because that's what the Torah starts off with. So Rabbi Dovid Gleizer says, and when you say Harei Ola, you'll bring either a turtle dove, Torah, or ben Yonah, or a regular dove.
Young dove.
A young dove. Below Paul Rabbi Yehuda, and Rabbi Yehuda doesn't argue over there. So Rabbi Yehuda there doesn't say, no, only bring the one the Torah starts off with. So that can't be his reason why you bring a fine flour offering over here. So Ella mai miyuchedes menachos. What did it mean when Rabbi Yehuda said you bring the fine flour offering? Because it's the unique one out of all the flour offerings. What's unique about it? And don't tell me it's because it's the first one mentioned in the Torah, because you see that's not true. That doesn't follow through in other areas. Answer is the Leslie Shem Levi, because it doesn't have any nickname, any borrowed name. It's not called a baked one, a deep fried pan, a shallow fried pan. It's just called fine flour. It has no unique name to it. So says the Gemara, okay, but the Mishnah says V'atana holu pasuk b'kas tchila kamar. The not the Mishnah, the Brisa. Yeah. The Brisa says the reason why he said this case is because the Torah starts off with that mincha offering. So says the Gemara, no, hachkamar. This is what it means to say. Izu mincha miyuchedesh b'menachos the last Hashem Levi, which is the mincha offering that doesn't have a nickname, any borrowed name, shallow pan, deep fried pan, baked offering, just called fine flour. That's the one zu shepasach bo akasav tchila. So it's like a reference point. When the Brisa says the one that Torah starts off with, it means to say which one is the one that you bring, the one that has no other name, no special nickname, and which one is that one, the one that the Torah starts off with. And that's called a minchas solas, a fine flour one. So says the Gemara, pshita, that's obvious. So minchas hasolas kamar, that Rabbi Yehuda said explicitly that you should bring a minchas hasolas. So what are you telling me that the way to reread the Brisa is? That he's just saying a reference point. He said in our Mishnah explicitly, minchas hasolas. So you don't need a reference point if you speak explicitly. So says the Gemara, simana ba'alma. You're right. He mentioned minchas hasolas is just as a sign, as a way to remember which one the Torah started off first. So really, we have a Mishnah and a Brisa that both quote Rabbi Yehuda, and they sort of complement each other. The Mishnah says you bring a minchas soles, because that's the unique one out of the Menachos. The Brisa says it's the one that the Torah starts off with, and our answer is the real one you bring is the unique one. Which is the unique one? The one that the Torah starts off with. What is that? Which one is that? So I don't forget what it is. After I finish Menachos, I'm in the middle of Chulin, and someone asks me which one is the one that the Torah starts off with. I'll tell them minchas soles. It's a way to remember. So that Rabbi Yehuda says you bring this unique one. Seharei mincha. So mincha, he didn't say what kind of mincha. It says Rabbi Yehuda, you bring the unique mincha. Ironically, it's unique because it has no nickname. It has no. That's why it's unique. But probably closer to understanding is that Harei mincha is the simplest one. So the simplest mincha is one that doesn't have any special name. It's just fine flour. So if you really meant a different mincha, you would have said a certain pan or baked or something. But this is the one that it refers to according to Rabbi Yehuda. According to other opinion, if you say I want to bring a mincha offering, bring whichever one. It doesn't say which one. You can bring anyone you want. You choose. You have the power. Okay, now. Bayirav Papa, mine mincha mahu. Now here comes a little bit of a contradiction. Mine is multiple types. A min is one type. Mine is multiple types. Mincha is singular though. So what does it mean? It sounds like I'm bringing multiple types of a singular thing. So that's a little bit of a contradiction. You can't bring multiple and then bring one. So mine, which is in the plural, mincha, which is in the singular, mahu. What do you do? So on the one hand, mine tarti kamar, mine means multiple ones. So maybe you should be obligated to bring multiple flour offerings. And then if that's true that you go after the first part of the statement, multiple, what does it mean? Umayi mincha, which is in a singular. It means the kula menachos nami mincha mikrin. All the flour offerings are referred to as mincha. Dechsiv v'zos Torahs ha-mincha. That after listening, before listening, when it refers to the flour offerings, it calls them, this is the category of the mincha. Now, in the category of the mincha, it's like your tab. Under the mincha, you have all the types. So the fact that you said mincha, which is singular, but we see in the Torah that when it says mincha, it doesn't refer to one flour offering. It refers to, I think, there's 9 total and 5 baked. So it refers to all the mincha offerings. So that's on the one hand. O Dilma, you'll go after really the second part of your statement. Kevan Amar mincha, you said I want to bring a mincha, chada mincha kamar. You want to bring one offering. Okay, so why'd you say multiples? Different kinds of mincha. Mai mine, which is multiple. Mai mine mincha. So hachi kamar. It really means mi mine mincha. I want to bring from the species, from the different kinds, one mincha. So how do you view this sentence of mine mincha? Do you say it means different types of flour offerings, and a mincha is just a way to refer to all the flour offerings? It's like that tab, flour offering, you have under it all the flour offerings. Or you say mine really means mi mine. I want to bring from the types of flour offerings. I want to bring one from the many types. I want to bring one of them. So are you obligated in one, or are you obligated in multiple? So now we're gonna have a price. Let's see if it answers the question. Yeah. So from the different types of flour offerings, I want to bring one of them. Is it one or is it multiple? Tashma mincha. It says mincha. So what does mincha mean? So tashma mincha or min mincha. If you say mincha, a flour offering, or you say min mincha. Now here you see the word min does not have that yud at the end. It means it's in the singular. One type of mincha. So what do? Yaviyachas. You bring one type of mincha. But what's the implication? Hamine mincha shtayim. The implication is you only bring one because you said min mincha. If you would have said mine mincha, multiple kinds, you would bring multiple mincha offerings. Says the Gemara, okay, that's your implication from the first part of the brisa. But look at the latter part of the brisa, and you're going to have an implication that's going to teach you the opposite. Ema Seifa says at the end of the brisa, menachos. Menachos in the plural, min menachos, or you say a type of menachos. Well, you have ishtayim, you got to bring 2. But that's only because you said menachos, you bring 2. But ha mine mincha, if you say types of mincha, then you only bring 1. So the beginning and the end of the brisa have contradictory implications. So what happens when you have inferences that contradict each other? You conclude elameha leka l'mashamina, that this brisa would be inconclusive for our question. You can't learn from the beginning and you can't learn from the end because it's going to come out of contradiction. Second attempt, tashma min menachos alai. So once again, min is in the singular, a type. One type of menachos is in the plural. Alai, it's upon me. So you said menachos. So clearly you want to bring multiple flour offerings. So what do? Yavi shtei menachos mi min echad. You said one type of multiple menachos. So what do? You bring 2 of one type of mincha. 2 shallow pan, 2 deep pan, 2 fine flour. Okay. But what's the implication? Ha mimine mincha. If you would have said the word mincha in the singular and mine in the plural, the implication is you bring 1 chada, meaning the only time you bring 2, this is the way the Gemara understands the brisa. The only time you bring 2 is going to be if you say shtei menachos, min menachos alai. So then you bring 2 from one kind. But ha mimine mincha, if you say multiple kinds of one mincha, so what do you bring? Only chada. You bring 1 offering. So that would be an answer to our question that mine mincha means from one type of mincha. So says the Gemara, not so fast. Dilma hamine mincha maybe shtei menachos mishnei minin. Maybe all the brisa was teaching us is that this is the example of bringing 2 menachos from one type. But if you would have said mine mincha, so then maybe shtei menachos mishnei minin. Then you would have brought multiple types. You would have multiple menachos from multiple types. That might have been, and therefore you don't have a conclusion to our question. But says the Gemara v'halo tani hachi. But that's not what it says. It says min menachos alai, maybe shtei menachos min menachot. Mine menachos alai. If you want to bring multiple kinds of multiple malachos, maybe shtei menachos mishnei minin. So the Brisa says you have two different. The Brisa gives you two examples. Either you can bring two menachos from one kind, or two menachos from two different kinds. However, but ha mine mincha. But if you would have said different types of one mincha, then you only are going to bring one and not multiple. Because if it wanted to bring multiple, it should have taught this case. It didn't teach this case when it taught bringing multiple mincha offerings. Therefore, you only bring one. So ha mine mincha echada, says the Gemara. Dilma. So maybe so says the Gemara. Dilma hamani Rabbi Shimon. Maybe our Mishnah is the opinion of Rabbi Shimon. He the Amar mechza chalos umechza rekikim. That we have a machlokas when you want to bring the different loaves offerings. So do you bring 10 breads or 10 wafers? Rabbi Shimon says you can bring half and half, or really you can bring any kinds, as long as you get the 10. 9 wafers, 1 loaf, 9 loaves, 1 wafer. Okay, so how does that help us? Maybe our Mishnah Reb Shimon, Umai mine mincha, when our question of what does it mean, mine mincha, meaning our Mishnah, the whole question was, our Mishnah says, if you say mincha or min mincha, one type of offering, you bring one. Rav Papa wanted to know, what if you bring mine, multiple types of one mincha? Is that plural or singular? You bring one or you bring multiple? So now that our Mishnah Reb Shimon, who says when you bring a baked, when you bring the baked offerings, the loaves, you can mix and match loaves and wafers. So now, according to Reb Shimon, you could answer Rav Papa's question. What would be the answer? Umayi mine mincha. Rav Papa asked, when you say mine, which is plural, and mincha, which is singular, what's the halacha? What it means to say is, it's a way of referring to a flour offering that has multiple kinds. What is a flour offering that has multiple kinds? According to Reb Shimon, it's the baked offering, the one that you put into the oven. That's one mincha, but it has multiple kinds, wafers and loaves, and you can mix and match 6 and 4, 5 and 5, 3 and 7, up to you. So mincha de ispa trey mini. It's a flour offering that has 2 different types, which according to Reb Shimon works very well. However, aval rabbanan amri mekza chalos umekza kikin lo yavi. But according to the rabbis who say you can't bring half and half, you can't mix and match either loaves or wafers. So maybe shtei menachos mishnei minin. But according to them, if you would say this formulation, so then it would be 2 menachos from 2 different types, because they don't have one mincha with 2 types, but have to be 2 menachos from 2 types: 1 deep fry, 1 shallow fry, 1 loaf, 1 pan. Okay, so that is that. So if you don't establish the Mishnah to be like Reb Shimon, our question is inconclusive. If you make our Mishnah Reb Shimon, then we have a conclusion, we have an answer to our question. Okay. Peirashti, I know I set aside some kind of flour offerings, but I have no idea what I did. You bring all five of those flour offerings. Now, Montana, so who's the author of our Mishnah? Amar Rabbi Yirmiyah, Lord Reb Shimon. That can't be Reb Shimon. Why? The Reb Shimon, if the Mishnah was Reb Shimon, came to our Mekza Chalos and Mekza Rekikin, Yavi. So if it was Reb Shimon who holds you can bring half Chalos and half Rekikin, so why does it say you only bring 5? You should be able to bring much more. The fact that our Mishnah only said you bring 5 excludes Reb Shimon, because according to Reb Shimon, one of those 5 can be you can really mix and match, and it could be wafers and loaves. Oh, 1 second. Sorry. I think what it means is that when you set aside, and you don't know which one you set aside, so we say you have to bring all 5. But according to Reb Shimon, you might have been referring to what? Only the baked offering. And you don't know if you set aside 9 and 1, 2 and 8, 3 and 7, 4 and 6. So therefore, if the Mishnah is Reb Shimon, it could be referring to this case also, where you don't know how many wafers versus how many loaves you set aside, and therefore you'd have to bring all of them. Yeah. So once again, our Mishnah that said, when you don't know how much you bring, you bring 5 offerings, the 5 flour offerings, is not like Reb Shimon. Because if it was Reb Shimon, you also have to wonder, well, how many did he mean in terms of his bread and his wafers? That's also a factor. So the fact that it didn't worry about that shows that it's not like Reb Shimon. Now, says the Gemara, Inami, the fact that you didn't worry about your wafers and your loaves is not indicative that you don't hold like Reb Shimon. Why? Because Inami, the Mishnah could be like Rabbi Yehuda. Sabar like Rabbi Yehuda. Rabbi Yehuda had a machlokes with Rav Meir. He holds the Amar Kollel Menachos Bos Eser. That all the Menachos, really referring to these baked Menachos, is you bring 10, either 10 loaves or 10 wafers. So now, if you don't know what you offer, you're not sure, Ika Lisfuka Be'arbasar. You actually have a doubt regarding 14 Menachos. Meaning, like this, according to Rabbi Yehuda that says you bring 10 loafers or 10 loaves, 10 wafers or 10 loaves, and so you say, I set aside offerings, I don't know which one. Mincha offerings, I don't know which one it is. So the math is like this. You have up to 14 that you have to worry about. Why? You have your soles, your fine flour, your machabas, your shallow pan, and your marcheshas, and your deep pan. That's 3 mincha offerings you got to bring, because it might be one of those. Then you have your minchas mapa, you have your baked mincha offering. In your baked mincha offering, there are 11 steikos, 11 doubts, 11 different formulations that could occur. What are they? Well, Dilma, you could have offered, out of the baked offering, you could have said only chalos, only loaves. That's 1. You could have offered only wafers. That's 2. Or maybe you offered 9 chalos and 1 wafer, 8 chalos and 2 wafers, 7 chalos and 3 wafers, 6 chalos and 4 wafers, 5 chalos and 5 wafers, 4 chalos and 6 wafers, 3 chalos and 7 wafers, 2 chalos and 8 wafers, 1 challah and 9 wafers. So that totals 11 possible, plus the 3 flour offerings, 11 more sveikos. So according to Rabbi Yehuda, you have to worry about these as well. Yeah. So according to them, there's much more than just 5 that you're worrying about. You're worrying about, according to Reb Shimon, how you mixed and matched your wafers and your loaves, and according to Rabbi Yehuda, you have up to 14 different doubts of what could have been brought. You have to cover all your bases. So Abai Amar, though, no. Afilu Tema Rabbi Shimon. Maybe our Mishnah is Rabbi Shimon, but then we asked, why you only worry about 5? You could have. There's a doubt of how you're gonna bring 5 wafers and 5 loaves or not. So that's another doubt. It should have mentioned that. So it says the Gemara, it's even Reb Shimon, and Shma'ina later Reb Shimon the Amar Maisi Umasni. It could be Reb Shimon, but Reb Shimon would say that you're allowed to stipulate. So you bring 2 of the baked offerings. One is all loaves and one is all wafers. And you say, if I originally really wanted to set aside loaves, or I want to set aside wafers, let that be my offering, and the other one be a nedava, be a voluntary offering. Or maybe I offered up half chalos and half wafers. So then, So you want to say you bring 10 loaves and 10 wafers. And you say, if it's all loaves, the wafers are voluntary. If it's all wafers, then the loaves are voluntary. If I did 5 and 5, then the other 5 and 5 are voluntary. So you can make a stipulation. Therefore, you're going to only have to bring 5 obligatory ones. You'll have to bring extra loaves, extra wafers, and do a stipulation, and those are going to be the voluntary offerings, just to cover your bases. But the Mishnah could still work according to Rabbi Shimon that you only bring 5. Out of the baked offerings, you'll have to make a stipulation. Now, where do we find that Rabbi Shimon says you can make such a stipulation? So, the Tanya Rabbi Shimon Omer, Lemachras maybe Ashamo Velugo. So, it's an interesting case over here. The Brisa says that we're talking about someone who is a Safek Nazir Tameh, the Safek Tahor. He's a Nazir, but he's not sure, is he pure or impure? He's not sure. Maybe he touched a corpse, maybe he didn't touch a corpse. And then we have also, I think it's talking about the same person, as a Safek Mitzora Muchlat Tameh, Safek Torah. Now, the Mitzora, we're not sure if he's pure or impure. So you have to wait 60 days until you can eat sacrificial foods. So what happens? So you're not sure if you're pure or impure. You're not sure if you're a Nazir, or that's pure or impure. You're not sure if you're a Mitzvah, that's pure or impure. So the halacha is maybe Ashamo Velugo Imo. You have to bring an Asham offering, and you have to bring a lug of oil. And you say as follows, Va'omer, Im Mitzorahu, if I'm a Mitzorah, so then, if I'm a Mitzorah, because maybe my time was up and I'm not a Mitzorah, meaning if I was pure, I'm no longer a Mitzorah. In the event that I was impure, I have to wait longer till I'm pure. So remember, so you're a doubtful Mitzorah. You're not sure if you were, you're a Mitzorah, but you're not sure if you were pure or impure. So you have to wait longer. So now you wait longer, so now you bring a sacrifice. So you say, if really I was still a Mitzorah, so then here's my Asham offering, and here's my lug, here's my oil offering. V'im lav, if I'm really not a Mitzorah, I finished a while ago, so then Asham zeh shalmi nedava. Let this Asham offering be a shalmi, be a peace offering, a voluntary peace offering. Now, that shlomim, remember, shlomim, you have a longer time to eat than an Asham. So usually this is problematic because you're now shortening your time of eating a shlomim. Instead of having 2 days, you only have 1 day. So you say, if it's my Asham, it's my Asham, and if not, it'll be a shlomim. This shlomim, though, is going to have all the rules of an Asham, because it might be an Asham. But also Asham, you need Ton Shchita B'Tzafon, you got to be shechted in the north, Umat and Bahonos, and you got to apply the blood on the Mitzorah, Bismicho and Esachim with Tenufos Chazav Ashok. You have to lean on it and have libations and wave it chest and thigh. V'nechal is Zikr Kahuna, and it has to be eaten by the Zikr Kahuna, Liyom V'Layla, by the Kohanim, day and night. So in the event that's an Asham, it has to have all the stringencies of an Asham. Now, the problem is that the Gemara in Zvachim addresses is that whenever you have a sacrifice that you can eat for longer, you're shortening its lifespan. So in the event that it's a shlomim, you have 2 days to eat it, but you can't eat it in 2 days. So you might be causing it to, so you are, if it could be eaten for 2 days, you have to eat it in 1 day. Sorry, it goes the other way. You have 2 days to eat it if it's a shlomim, but you only have 1 day to eat it if it's an asham. So you're risking such a stipulation, risks letting the asham, this doubtful guilt offering, linger for more than a day and a night. So in the event that it's a guilt offering, it's going to be no sar. You have to burn it. It's only if it's going to be a peace offering is it good. So that's a problem because you're basically making a situation where a guilt offering might be staying around longer than a day and a night. And that's invalid because once again, it's a doubtful offering. We don't know what it is. It's maybe guilt offering, maybe peace offering. In the end, it's a peace offering, you have, let's say, till Tuesday. And if then there's a guilt offering, you have till Monday. So you're risking letting an offering linger for longer. That's not right. So the afal gav become a farik mar b'shchitas kachim. So the Gemara in Zvachim addressed this question, And what was its answer? Its answer was, you're right. Usually you can't do that. You can't make this kind of stipulation and then make a situation where the offering might linger past its time. But this is a unique case. That's when the Rabbi Shimon said you can make a stipulation. Ideally, that's litikune gavra. There's only cases where you want to literally fix the person, make him not a mitzora anymore, make him not a nazir anymore. Those cases, he allowed you to do it. Aval ba'alma, in general, where it's not coming to purify the person, you cannot just make stipulations like this because it's risking putting the sacrifices in a situation where they might be lingering past their time. So aval ba'alma, the avidin lechatchila lo. So how could you tell me that our case is you're bringing the challahs and the loaves and the wafers, and it's Reb Shimon, and you made a stipulation? If I offered loaves, let the wafers be a voluntary offering. If not. We see Rabbi Shimon is very precise when he allows you to make stipulations. So says the Gemara, no, you misunderstood. The time where the situation where he does not let you ideally make a stipulation is hani mili gabe shlomim. That's regarding a peace offering. If there's a peace offering here, you can't stipulate it and say, maybe it's a guilt offering, because then you're causing it to potentially linger past its time. If it's a peace offering, you have 2 days. If it's a guilt offering, you have 1 day. So there he says you shouldn't do that. Why? They come in ma'id ba'chilasan, because you are lessening its time to be in as a shlomim, and therefore it's going to bring it to be it's going to invalidate it. Aval menachos, flour offerings, I feel lechatchila, but by flour offerings, what's the problem? Let it be a wafer or let it be a loaf. What's the difference? There's the same time. They're all the same rules. So there's no problem. Therefore, the Mishnah could even be Rebbe Shimon. And the reason why we said only 5 offerings you bring is because within the baked offerings, you're going to end up bringing only either you're going to bring loaves or you're going to bring wafers, or you'll bring 5 and 5, and the other ones are going to be voluntary. Okay. So that's that. Now, Amar le Rav Papa le'Abaye. Rav Papa says to Abaye, who just told us that our Mishnah could even be Reb Shimon. So according to you, Abaye, Reb Shimon, the Amar. According to Reb Shimon, who says you can mix and match wafers and loaves, Yavi. So now what happens though? Hakamaisi isaron echad mishnei esronin velug echad mishnei lugin. According to Reb Shimon, who says that you bring 20 different baked offerings, 10 loaves and 10 wafers, and you say, if I brought 10 loaves, let the 10 wafers be voluntary. If I brought 10 wafers, let the 10 loaves be voluntary. If I brought 5 and 5, let the other 5 and 5 be voluntary. So according to that, what happens? You now need to bring a measurement of flour and a measurement of oil. Now you have 20 offerings in front of you, right? You have 10 loaves and 10 wafers. So you have 20 measurements of in front of you, and you have all this oil in front of you that you have to bring. But you're only going to bring an isaron of it. So let's say you need to bring 1 isaron. You need to bring 1/10 for your offering, and you need to bring 1 lug of oil for your offering. Now you have double the amount here because you have double of the sacrifices. You have 10 loaves, or flour for 10 loaves, and flour for 10 wafers. So out of these, you're only bringing 1. You're bringing 1 isaron from 2 esronos, and 1 lug from 2 lugs. That's all you're bringing for your baked flour offering. Okay. But 1 second, if that's true, So you're really mixing. You're mixing the flour from the wafers, and you're mixing the flour from the loaves, right? Because remember, you don't know what you offered. So in your baked offering, you don't know which one it is. So what are your options? You have to cover all your bases. So you say, if I brought 10 loaves, let the wafers be voluntary. If I offered 10 wafers, let the loaves be voluntary. And if I offered 5 and 5, let the other 5 and 5 be voluntary. What do you have to do? You have to bring flour, which is a combination of wafers and loaves, as your obligatory offering, because maybe I brought loaves, maybe I brought wafers. So you're bringing flour from some from the loaves and some from the wafers, and you're bringing oil, some from the loaves, some from the wafers. It has to come from a mixed bunch because your offering might be loaf, might be wafer, you don't know. So you bring some from here and some from there. So now, yeah, according to that, you would fulfill your obligation. But says the Gemara, hold on. So how exactly are you going to do kmitza? Meaning you need to bring one amount, but you have to bring it from two different offerings. So how do you scoop that out? So umikmat hechi kamatz, demashni va'amar, you made the following stipulation. You say, ichalas lechudayu v'rakikin lechudayu. If you're bringing, if it's loaves on its own and wafers on its own, so then ichalas lechudayu v'rakikin lechudayu, amri deka kemitzna mechalos lahavi achalos, and that the kemitzna merakikin lahavi erakikin. So if you're really bringing them separately, meaning your loaves are going to be for your obligatory offering and your wafers for your voluntary offering, so you'll bring some from the, you can bring some from the loaves and some from the wafers. Okay. However, if you're really half loaves and half wafers are going to be your offering, so when you take a kmitza from the loaf flour, the flour that made the loaves, so you say, let that be for half chalos, for 5 chalos, and then you take a scoop from the flour for the rakikin, for the wafers, and you say umekta rakikin v'dekak kamitzna merakikin lahavi amekta rakikin lahavi amekta rakikin Okay. Sorry. When one second. I'm reading the kamitzna mechalos lahavi achalos kamitzna merakikin lahavi rakikin. If it's half and half, 5 chalos and 5 rakikin, when you take kmitza from the flour that makes the loaves, you say let it be half on chalos and half of the rakikin. You let the one loaf flour go for both. But the rakikin, if you want to, and when you take flour off of the rakikin, what do you say? You said let this flour of the rakikin go on half the loaves and half the wafers. So that would be the stipulation that you would do. The habayi mikmatz chad kometz mechalos. You know, let's stop here.